Hello everyone, welcome. This is continuation of Shankar IAS Environment series. You can watch the chapters which are already covered in the playlist available in Vysh IAS YouTube channel. Also have a look at all other playlists which are designed for UPSC. These are all part of paid courses, but if response is good, they can be put here for free. So subscribe and leave a feedback comment. Serious aspirants can contact Vysh Sir on WhatsApp 7200681675 anytime for test series details or foundational videos. This is Chapter 20, Impact of Climate Change. This is more of theory and would be helpful in mains. Agriculture and food security. Climate change can affect crop yield as well as the types of crops that can be grown by impacting inputs such as water, solar radiation, as well as prevalence of pests. Rise in temperature caused by these greenhouse gases is likely to affect crops differently from one region to another. For example, moderate warming is expected to benefit crop yields in temperate regions, while in lower latitudes like that of tropics, even slight increase in temperature are likely to have negative impact for major cereal crops. Warming of more than 3 degrees centigrade is expected to have negative effect on production in all the regions. Climate change would hit the poorest countries and developing countries severely in terms of reducing the agricultural products. Crop yield would be reduced in most tropical and subtropical regions due to decreased water availability and changed insect incidence. Even in South Asia, there would be losses of many regional staples like rice, millet, and maize as a result of thawing of snow that is getting converted into liquid. Amount of arable land in high latitude region is likely to increase by reduction of the amount of frozen lands. On the other hand, arable land along the coastlines are bound to be reduced. Amount of arable land in high latitude, that is in polar regions, likely to increase by reduction of the amount of frozen lands, while along the coastlines land would be bound to be reduced as a result of rising sea level. Erosion, submergence of shorelines, salinity of the water table due to increased sea levels could mainly affect agriculture through inundation of low-lying lands, that is flooding. If agricultural production in the low-income developing countries of Asia and Africa is adversely affected, the livelihoods of the rural poor will be at risk and their vulnerability to food insecurity will be increased dramatically. Himalayan glaciers, which are the water sources of Asia's biggest rivers like Ganges, Indus, Brahmaputra, are also shrinking quicker, and if this trend continues, even they could disappear by 2035. Impacts on Indian agriculture. We all know large part of arable land is rain-fed and productivity of agriculture depends on rainfall and its pattern. Agriculture will be adversely affected not only by increase or decrease in the amounts of rainfall but also by shifts in the timing of the rainfall. Any change in this pattern will pose a serious threat to agriculture, therefore to the economy and food security. Summer rainfall accounts for almost 70% and it is very crucial to Indian agriculture. However, studies predict that decline in summer rainfall by the 2050s. Semi-arid regions of Western India are expected to receive higher than normal rainfall, while Central India will experience decrease of between 10 and 20% in winter rainfall by the 2050s. So there is this abnormal shift in the rainfall pattern cause large water resources problems, particularly in arid and semi-arid regions. Productivity of most crops may decrease due to increase in temperature and decrease in water availability. Especially, this trend could be seen in Indo-Gangetic plains. There would be a decline in the productivity of Rabi as compared to Kharif season crops because we can supplement the crops with the help of technology. But when there is rainfall, when there is this abnormal trend of rainfall in Rabi season, that could be a major concern to the crops because the crops only need minimal water consumption, and if it is more than that, it would be a very serious concern and it would affect the Rabi crops. Rising temperature would increase fertilizer requirement for the same production targets and result in higher greenhouse gas emissions, ammonia volatilization, and cost of crop production. Increased frequencies of droughts, floods, storms, and cyclones are likely to increase agricultural production variability. Due to these events, there is a variation in agricultural production. Water stress and water insecurity. Lack of access to water is a very disturbing issue, particularly in developing countries. Climate change is expected to exacerbate current stresses on water resources. Many people are getting exposed to increased water stress due to climate change. Spreading water scarcity is contributing to food insecurity and heightened competitions of water, not only within countries but also between countries. As the world population expands, consumption of water increases and water problems are bound to intensify. Increase in temperature has been widespread over the globe. Warming has resulted in decline in mountain glaciers and snow cover in both the hemispheres. This will in turn lead to reduced water availability, hydropower potential, and would change the seasonal flow of rivers, especially from the mountain ranges. By 2050s, freshwater availability in Central, Southeast, and Southeast Asia is projected to decrease, particularly in large river basins. Warmer climate will accelerate the hydrologic cycle, altering rainfall magnitude and timing of runoff. Significant future increase in heavy rainfall events in many regions, while in some regions, mean rainfall is projected to decrease. Frequency of severe floods in large river basins has increased. Increased floods poses challenges to society, physical infrastructure, and water quality, as we have been seeing in current affairs. Rising temperatures will further affect the physical, chemical, and biological properties of freshwater lakes and rivers, with having adverse impacts on species and communities, and also to the water quality. In coastal areas, sea level rise will exacerbate water resource constraints due to increased salinization of groundwater supplies. Impacts on water situation in India. Water resources will come under pressure due to the changing climate. Himalayan glaciers are source of fresh water for perennial rivers like Indus, Ganga, and Brahmaputra. In recent decades, Himalayan region seems to have undergone changes as a result of extensive land use like deforestation, agricultural practices, and urbanization, leading to frequent hydrological disasters, enhanced sedimentation, and pollution of lakes. There is evidence that Himalayan glaciers have been retreating significantly since the 19th century. Retreating is a mechanism where the melting of ice is faster than formation of ice. Glacial melt is expected to increase under climate conditions, which would lead to increased summer flows in some river systems, following a reduction in flow as the glaciers disappear. A serious environmental problem has also been witnessed in the Indo-Gangetic Plain region, whereby different rivers like Kosi, Ganga, Gagra, Son, Indus, and its tributaries and Yamuna changed their course a number of times. Increase in temperature changes rainfall pattern, which we have been observing over the years. The recent floods in Nepal and Bihar is an example of course of river Kosi. Available study also tells us that food production has to be increased to meet the requirement, ever growing population requirement. This could be quite grim, particularly in view of the serious problem of soil degradation and climate change. Total food grain production has to be increased. Rise in population will increase the demand for water, leading to faster withdrawal of water, and this in turn would reduce the recharging time of the water tables. Availability of water is bound to reach critical levels sooner or later. There has been increase in the growth of groundwater exploitation. Growing demand of water in agriculture, industrial, and domestic sectors has brought problems of overexploitation of the groundwater resource to the fore. Falling groundwater levels have threatened sustainability of the groundwater resources. Water demand shows that agriculture sector is the largest consumer of water in India according to the statistics available. Even if the demand come down, agriculture will still remain the largest consumer. In order to meet the demand, augmentation of the existing water resources by development of additional sources of water or conservation of the existing resources should be made mandatory. It is evident that impact of global warming threats are many and it's alarming. Water security in terms of quantity and quality pose problems for both developed and developing countries. However, consequences of this climate change may be felt more severely in developing countries like India, whose economy is largely dependent on agriculture and is already under stress due to current population increase and demands for energy, fresh water, and food is ever growing. Rise in sea levels. Sea level rise is both due to thermal expansion as well as melting of ice sheets. Satellite observations have shown that sea level has been rising at a rate per year which is significantly higher than the average. IPCC predicts that sea levels could rise rapidly with accelerated ice sheet disintegration. Global temperature increase of 3 to 4 degrees centigrade could result in million people being permanently or temporarily displaced through flooding. Warming seas will also fuel more intense tropical storms. Impacts on coastal states in India. Coastal states like Maharashtra, Goa, and Gujarat face grave risk from the sea level rise, which could actually flood land, including agricultural land, and cause damage to coastal infrastructure and other property. Goa will be the worst hit, losing large part of its land, including famous beaches and tourist infrastructure. Mumbai's northern suburbs and other areas along tidal mud flats and creeks are vulnerable to land loss and increased flooding due to sea level rise. Flooding will displace large number of people, putting a great pressure on the civic amenities and rapid urbanization. Seawater percolation due to inundations, that is flooding, can diminish fresh water supplies, making water even more scarcer. States along the coast like Orissa will experience worse cyclones. Many species living along are also threatened. Coral reefs that India has in its biosphere reserves are saline sensitive, and thus the rising sea level threatens their existence. Not only coral reefs but the phytoplankton, fish stocks, and human lives that are dependent on it are also in danger. People living in Ganges Delta share the flood risks associated with this rising sea level. Ecosystems and biodiversity. Climate change has the potential to cause immense biodiversity loss which support economic growth and human well-being. It affects species and their ecosystems. The projected extinctions of flora and fauna in the future will be human driven because of human activities. According to International WWF, species from the tropics to the poles are at risk. Many species may be unable to move to new areas quickly enough to survive changes. It has catastrophic impact on the marine ecosystems, and most vulnerable natural areas may be facing catastrophic loss of species. They will be affected not only by increase in sea temperature and changes in ocean circulation, but also by ocean acidification as the concentration of dissolved carbon dioxide rises, as oceans tend to absorb more carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. This is expected to negatively affect shell-forming organisms, corals, and their dependent ecosystems. Impacts on India's biodiversity. India is a land of mega biodiversity. It has a wide range of features from glaciers to deserts. Climate change is posing threat to all its ecosystems. Mountain ecosystems are hotspots of biodiversity. Temperature increase and human activities are causing fragmentation and degradation of mountain biodiversity. Himalayan ecosystem is considered as lifeline not only to India but also to neighboring countries like China, Pakistan, Nepal. Owing to the melting glaciers, it is home to largest amount of glaciers after the north and south poles. However, this climate change is threatening Himalayan ecosystem. It is also predicted that there will be increase in the phenomenon of glacial lake outburst floods in the eastern and central Himalayas, causing catastrophic flooding downstream. Himalayan rivers are closely interlinked with the Indo-Gangetic ecosystem. The melting glaciers of the Himalayas have serious impact because they give rise to the perennial rivers that flourishes the agriculture. Deserts have shown signs of expansion, thus leading to a process called desertification. Not to forget, Indian desert fauna is rich in species diversity of mammals and migratory birds. Climate patterns have altered the natural attributes of desert region. For example, the floods in the desert, which occurred in Barmer district in Rajasthan in the year 2006. Coastal and marine ecosystem is an asset. Mangrove forests, that is wetlands of the rivers, act as a natural barrier to flooding and cyclones. And these wetlands of rivers and coast also act as carbon sink as well as habitat for species, many diverse species of plants and animals. The most explicit event affecting the marine ecosystem is example of coral bleaching. In the peninsular India, coral bleaching, this has been explained in the previous chapters. Please go through it. In the peninsular India, even the rivers of the peninsula are dependent on the monsoons. Peninsular ecosystem is monsoon dependent ecosystem. India is also dependent on the monsoon to meet its agricultural and water needs. Climate change is linked with the changing patterns observed in the monsoons of our country. Climate change and health. Climate change poses a series of threats to the survival of mankind. Each year, about lakhs together people die from causes attributed to air pollution. Millions die from diarrhea due to lack of access to clean water supply, sanitation, and poor hygiene. And also many from malnutrition, and approximately some 60,000 in natural disasters. A warmer and more variable climate would result in higher levels of air pollutants. There is increased transmission of diseases due to unclean water supply through contaminated food. Climate change has a direct impact on human health. Warmer the climate, the likelihood of its impact on human health becomes worse. So, climate change, you could just imagine how worse is this climate change. It is also anticipated that there will be an increase in the number of deaths due to greater frequency and severity of heat waves and other extreme weather events. Climate change and global temperatures are causing increased frequency of floods and droughts, leading to the risk of disease infections. Lack of fresh water during droughts and contamination of freshwater supplies during floods, compromise hygiene, increases rates of diarrheal diseases. Endemic morbidity and mortality due to diarrheal disease are expected to rise in Asia, especially in East, South, and Southeast Asia, due to changes in hydrological cycle. Flooding also creates opportunities for breeding of disease-carrying insects like that of mosquitoes. Areas affected by floods and droughts also witness large-scale migration of populations to relatively less stable regions, leading to overcrowding and unhygienic conditions, resulting in transmission of diseases like Japanese encephalitis and malaria. Climate change is a major factor in the spread of infectious diseases, and these diseases can be spread from one region to another. WHO has indicated that due to rising temperature, malaria are being reported in the new countries as well. It has also been predicted that additional 220 to 400 million people could be exposed to malaria, a disease that claims around 1 million lives annually. Dengue fever is already in evidence at higher levels of elevation in Latin America and parts of East Asia. Rising temperatures and changing patterns are projected to decrease crop yields in many developing countries, stressing food supplies will ultimately translate into wider prevalence of malnutrition and undernutrition. Emission of greenhouse gases have been responsible for the depletion of ozone layer. This ozone layer protects Earth from the harmful UV rays of the sun. Depletion of the ozone results in higher exposure to the ultraviolet rays of the sun, leading to an increase in the incidence of skin cancer. It could also lead to increase in number of people suffering from eye diseases such as cataract. It is also thought to cause suppression of the immune system. Negative effects of climate change on health are greater, and the negative effects are concentrated on poor populations that already have compromised health prospects, thus widening the inequality gap between the most and the least privileged. The balance of positive and negative health impacts will vary from one location to another. It alters over time as temperature rises. And this is a fact. Saponins are a group of water-soluble glucosides that yield soap froth and water. They form emulsions with oils and fats and are capable of absorbing large amounts of gases such as carbon dioxide. Soap nut tree yields these saponins. This completes the chapter. Hope you all liked it. You can give your feedback in the comment section. Thank you.